All right, everyone. So welcome to the WISE Workshops number one, Graduate School 101. Today, I will be presenting to you all on some aspects of graduate school, and I'll go ahead and introduce myself. But before we do that, let's wait about 30 more seconds to see if there's more participants coming into the webinar, and we'll get going with the next slide. Okay. All right, perfect. So let's get going with the presentation. Let me introduce myself first. So my name is Edgar. Well, before I do that, I want to make sure that you know that this session has been recorded. So please, if you want to access this presentation after, I'm sure Idea will be happy to talk to you about that. But my name is Edgar Beas. I am a graduate diversity officer for the Office of Graduate Division on campus. And I do graduate related type of work. So if you have any questions about this presentation or after we end this presentation, please let me know. You have my email here, and I can share this at the end of the actual presentation as well. So we have a lot of ground to cover here today. This presentation is going to focus on the basics of graduate school, but we're also going to talk about the application for graduate program. So I wanted to make sure to take you all the way from like the main idea of graduate school and what it is, all the way until actually you conceptualizing it and actually you applying for a graduate program. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and talk about that whole process and sort of what to do. So please, if you have questions, we're gonna have some time at the end for Q&A. So feel free to use the Q&A feature of the webinar, and I'll be happy to answer those, at the end. All right, so let's get going with, again, we're gonna start with the basics, right? So the basic definition of graduate school, this is what I've basically come up with, and graduate education just encompasses research, study, and teaching beyond the bachelor's degree. You're all currently bachelor's students, bachelor's degree students at UC San Diego, and you will be looking for graduate school opportunities, graduate programs in the future. So those will entail research, study, and teaching, right, beyond what your degree would be once you finish. Now, let's talk briefly about the differences between undergraduate and graduate, just so you can also learn more about what you can expect in graduate school. So number one is you'll be surrounded in graduate school by like-minded people, meaning that your studies are going to be more specialized. Therefore, your peers are going to also be studying the same field, the same area within that field, that you will be that you would be in graduate school. So think of it as right now when you're an undergrad, you're taking classes with individuals that in your case you might be taking engineering classes with other engineering majors, but in graduate school you're going to be focusing in your particular area of engineering that you're interested. Okay. Number two here is classes are going to be much more interactive in graduate school, meaning that because they're smaller, also your faculty, your professors are going to expect more of you. And again, and that goes with the next bullet points, which are they're going to ask you to think on a different level. They're also going to be, if we go to the last bullet point, professors are also going to treat you more like peers. So again, a smaller cohort, more specialized, more interaction. You're thinking at a different level here, and you're also being treated as a peer. So with that, you're also expected to do a lot more research and a lot of writing, right? So research, and writing. Okay, so those are some basic differences, but the biggest difference is that you will be creating knowledge, right? So particularly in more advanced degrees like doctoral degrees, you would be actually creating the knowledge that you will see in textbooks in the future, right? In your areas, you will be sort of spearheading different studies and different projects, and you would therefore you would be getting some results and creating new knowledge, right? So that is the biggest difference between the two. Now, with that, let's look at some national statistics and data about graduate school just in general, so I can give you a perspective, a broader perspective and a national perspective of what most of the individuals at your age are doing. So let's look first at some data for individuals with a graduate degree. So this is data from the Census Bureau 2017. So if we look at this graph, about 8% of women aged 18 to 34 have a graduate degree versus 5% of men, right? So between ages 18 to 34, this is basically a graduate degree. And we're counting here, obviously, a master's, doctoral, any type of graduate degree, right? All right, the next one talks about educational attainment. So for this one, if we look at the graph, population 25 and over who have completed a bachelor's degree or higher, right? And this is a time graph, so from 2000 to 2018. As you can see in the graph, it's color-coded by the type of degree. So both, well, actually, orange, gray, and yellow, all three of them are graduate degrees. And you can see there how the actual size of that color is actually increasing, of that bar is actually increasing with the years. So graduate education is more and more common, with time now. And as you can see, the population over 25 and over it has been increasing, in students getting their graduate degree as well. So median earnings also, if you have a graduate degree, the last bar that you see right there, obviously your earnings also increase, right? Compared to a bachelor's degree. And again, these are just median data by educational attainment and data by the US Census Bureau. Okay, so if after this, or you're curious obviously about graduate school, that's why you're here. If you think that graduate school is for me or might be something that you will be interested or curious about, then let's talk about what you can do now and when you can start sort of putting together so you can start searching for graduate school programs. So let's talk before we sort of go into detail. Let's talk about the type of degree programs, and let's just go over this as a little refresher, right? So graduate degrees, we're talking about master's degrees. In general terms, there are other type of graduate degrees such as certificates and other things like that, but these are the main ones, right? Master's degrees and doctoral degrees. So let's look at the differences here between the two. So obviously, a master's degree is 1 to 2 years in full-time or 3 years of part-time studies, right? So it just depends on what type of degree you apply for and you get into is the type of setup that they have. They might, only offer full-time enrollment. So you have to ask whether it's a 1 or a 2-year program, right? So individuals are able to do a part-time if it's available for them at that institution. Let's look at the doctoral degree in this same bullet points. So compared to a doctoral degree, it's usually 5 to 7 years and is usually full-time, okay? Also, let's go back to the second bullet point. So master's degrees are usually coursework based, and doctoral degrees offer courses during the first or 2 years of your doctoral degree. And then after that, it's pretty much research and writing, okay? Third bullet point right here, master's degrees usually include, may or may not include a research thesis, but our doctoral degree is all about doing research, right? So those are the main differences there. With the last bullet point, usually the culminating experience for a master's degree is usually a comprehensive exam or a project, but for a doctoral degree is a doctoral dissertation and a doctoral defense. So again, we look at the differences here, right? So basic differences and sort of more heavier differences. So the master's degrees obviously are going to be more of that type of degree that you're going to go and you're going to learn about a specific um, area, but you're also going to be, taking courses and also learning more in-depth aspects of that particular area. In a doctoral degree, you're doing research, right? So you're doing research, you're also taking courses, but the bulk of it is research and writing, right? Writing for that dissertation and defending that. So depending on the field, a terminal degree may be a master's or a doctoral program. I mean, a terminal degree just means that that is the last degree that you can get for your particular field. In this case, all of you are engineering students, all of you have the option to do a doctoral degree. So usually, I didn't talk about the examples of both, but if you see right below the box right there, you can see a master's degree. Usually you would see the MS, which stands for Master of Science. An MEng is a Master of Engineering, and MA is a Master of Arts. And doctoral degrees, you would usually just see them by a PhD, which is a Doctor of Philosophy, right? The EDD is an education type of doctorate, but it's just an example. Okay, so now we're clear about the type of degrees that there are for graduate school, let's talk about things that you can start doing to search for graduate programs, right? So when you start looking for graduate programs, you're gonna obviously make sure that throughout the time that you look, that you also pay attention to your classes, that you also keep your GPA competitive, right? You don't want to, obviously not pay attention to that part. But when you start when you start looking for programs, for graduate programs, you also want to make sure that at those institutions that you might be interested in going, you might want to search for research undergraduate programs maybe that they offer for you. Because let's just say that you're interested in going to Stanford, right? Let's look and see if there's a research undergraduate program at Stanford that maybe you can do now while you're an undergraduate at UC San Diego to get some research experience, and potentially meet people at Stanford because that's one of the programs that you're interested in, right? So those are that's one of the things that you can do now. Also visiting campuses, right? Researchers on campus, finding those researchers on campus, and the visiting also the academic department on that campus is really, really important, okay? Because then you start sort of envisioning yourself there and also searching for sort of the things that you think are important for you in that particular campus. Lastly, calling the academic department, getting in contact with them to find out about different faculty research specialties, right? So you can do this by also searching the website, but I would recommend that once you have that list, you reach out to the academic department, right? So it's important that you get to sort of talk to them and be able to make connections and to establish some sort of rapport and contact at that particular academic department for the schools that you want to go to. Okay. The next step you want to do is, this is, I would say, the main recommendation by most graduate students when you talk to them. It's like, keep things in writing somewhere. The easiest and what they all recommend, what most of all recommend, is creating a spreadsheet, right? So creating a spreadsheet with your own sort of criteria in what you're looking for in the different schools and programs, right? So you also in this spreadsheet can include, faculty in that program that you might be interested in doing research with, right? So here is a little picture with an example. So you want to put different columns, right? With, again, the criteria that you think is important for you. I've seen students just having something very basic like this, which is just the school, the city, the state, that program that you will be applying, when is their admissions deadline, their program ranking, national rankings and others, and then the faculty that they're interested in working with in that particular program, right? But then you can add to this, you can add other items such as what are their admissions requirements, right? Do they require the GRE or not? Do they require how many letters of recommendation and who those people are going to be, right? You can even write notes, other columns with notes and comments, such as, hey, I spoke to this specific person and he or she is the graduate coordinator at that particular program. I spoke to them in April of last year, and so just writing some notes, right? This is all important, and it could play a huge role when you're actually, you know, having more and more interactions with them as time goes by, because you're going to receive emails from them. So it's always good to just have everything in writing, right? So again, main thing, big recommendation by graduate students and other professional folks: create some type of spreadsheet, some type of table where you can have all these things in writing, and you can go back with whenever you want. All right. Now, when you're looking for graduate programs, you could just be sitting at home, you know, in your computer and just be typing different schools and different graduate programs, right? So let's just put a quick example here. Let's just go with the example that I provided in the last slide, which is material science. Material science, you're interested in material science at a particular university. Let's just say you're interested in UCLA. So UCLA, you want to look for things in that particular campus that might be important for you once you become a graduate student. So number one is the academics. And by this, I mean, like, what are the rankings of that particular program? Who is the faculty? Do they have even a program for material science? You know, what are the types of academic related items that are important for you? And that's what you want to start researching for. Housing, right? Do they offer graduate housing for students? Go to the next bullet point idea there, family and children. If you are someone who will be bringing family and children to the school, what type of housing and accommodations do they offer for students with family and children? Graduate student associations, right? If engagement on campus, if you are currently, you know, connected to different organizations on campus, even here at UC San Diego, you know, are there other organizations and other associations at UCLA, you know? Sports and recreation, health and wellness, arts and culture, all of these are things that you would do on the site, right? You're also, you think about how you're gonna be in that particular institution for the next 2 years if you do a master's, or 5 to 7 years if you do a doctoral program. So if you are a sports kind of person, or if you're into the arts, you know, or other things like that, what do they have to offer, right? So just look at the different things that these schools have to offer. Also, in particular, conferences and annual meetings, meaning, do students in material science usually go to conferences and annual meetings, and what kind of conferences do they go, right? Professional development, professional work networking as well, and career development. All of these are important, right? Because once you become a graduate student at that particular institution, then you're going to be, you know, there looking for resources to find careers after that, right? So these are all things that will be important for you to know. And geographic location, obviously. So that's one thing that a lot of people are you know, concerned or just looking for, I guess. So these are some items that you can look for in graduate programs. But let's talk about what you can do now as an undergraduate. And I just put the whole spectrum here because I don't know, I don't have, you know, of all of our participants today, you might be at different stages, you know, in these years. So as a freshman, sophomore, our recommendation is, if you're considering graduate school in the future, maintain good grades, you know, seek co-curricular opportunities, visit the career center and talk to the professionals there about grad school, you know, start conducting some undergraduate research if you haven't done so. It's important that you do that for graduate school. And then maybe ask about combined degree programs to your college advisors, right? There are some combined degree programs at UC San Diego, like the BSMS programs. So if that's an option for you to complete a master's degree, good. As a junior, obviously you want to continue to maintain a good GPA, take some leadership opportunities if you have the chance to, get to know some faculty, because this is a time where more than likely you're going to be either starting to look for graduate schools or you're going to start applying to graduate schools, you know. Well, I guess you don't during junior year, but at the end, you know, in that summer prior to fall of your senior year, you're going to start putting together applications. So it'll be really important to already have some relationships with faculty that can potentially give you a letter of recommendation, right? So consider summer research programs as well. Getting some more research experience is always helpful. Talk to graduate students, right? This is a good time to start going out there and asking questions to graduate students, particularly at, again, UC San Diego. You have plenty of grad students around that you can talk to. It's just a matter of you know, establishing a connection, maybe through your professor or through your advisor. And also having informational interviews. And I'm going to talk about informational interviews in our next slide. In senior year, what you can do is you want to definitely start applying in the fall if you're looking to do graduate school right after you finish your bachelor's degree. So you want to definitely apply in the fall quarter. You want to continue to make good progress, and you want to definitely continue to be involved on campus on different organizations. It will be a good idea to showcase your research now that you've done some research. Maybe go present at a specific conference, a science conference, an engineering conference. So that's going to be something important for senior year. And definitely interviews, informational interviews are key during, even prior to this time, because, you know, when you start applying, it would be in senior year. Informational interviews, all they are just a conversation, you know, getting information from either a professor at your school of choice, you know, in that particular graduate program that you're looking for, or even a graduate coordinator, someone who is familiar with that particular graduate program, right? So there's three basic steps to conduct an informational interview, right? So you first want to research and prepare the questions that you're going to ask that person. So you can, again, you know, contact an individual, let's just say the graduate coordinator for a specific graduate program, and you want to say, hey, I would like to have an informational conversation with you about the material science program, right? So I'm just going with the same example. Number two, you want to prepare the questions obviously before you do the actual interview. So number two is conducting it, right? So you agree to meet via Zoom, or you agree to, you know, meet in person and actually, you know, talk about that particular graduate program. Number three is after you've done that, definitely you want to follow up and send a little thank you note or a little, you know, thank you email, and definitely manage that relationship after, right? It is really important, you know, it will go a long way. A simple thank you email for thank you for all the information you provided to me. It was really helpful. You know, it helped me, you know, getting I guess, you know, the whole scope about the program. And then after that, definitely managing that relationship, right? So these are all informational interview steps. And some of the things that you can talk about during this interview, you can draft questions on summer research programs. So does your campus have a research program or a summer research program that I can come to, you know, or I can apply for? What are your specific admissions requirements and admissions processes? How do I connect with faculty, right? Can you connect me with a grad student? Can I sit down in a grad class, in a graduate level class, maybe to sort of see what graduate students are learning? And then the last there is what type of academic support and financial support does your department offer the students, right? So that's another topic for these interviews. Does that make sense? Hopefully you're writing notes and you're also writing some questions if you have any, okay? I'll answer them at the end. All right, we're moving along. Okay, we're good. I mentioned also undergraduate research, right? So in this flow chart here, I mentioned undergraduate research is important to start looking at opportunities even in the sophomore year, definitely in junior year. So for UC San Diego students, there's an office on campus called the Academic Enrichment Programs Office, right? And this office basically is assigned to give you the experiences that you want, you know, and offer you opportunities such as scholarships, maybe taking you to conferences, maybe offering some funding for you to attend to these conferences, right? And they will have programs for you that you can apply for to get potential research experience, you know, and all in preparation and all in the efforts of helping you getting into a grad program after, right? So if you haven't connected with the Academic Enrichment Programs Office, please do. There are great resources on campus. Take a screenshot of this, but this is their phone and this is their email and their website, okay? Before I move forward, I think there was a question about what exactly do I mean by managing their relationship in the previous slide. Let me just go back really quickly and touch upon that before I move on. So in number 3 right here, informational interview, follow up with a thank you and manage the relationship thereafter. Okay, so what I mean is, okay, after you send that email with that thank you note, just say, hey, thank you for the information. It was really helpful. And then maybe follow up again, right? In 6 months after that and just say, hey, you know, I talked to you 6 months ago about, we had a conversation, but now I have a question about the letters of recommendation, right? So managing the relationship just means following up, you know, and just reminding the person that you had a conversation with them. So just managing that part. Okay, so hopefully that was clear for that person that asked the question. And again, if you have more questions, please either ask them through the Q&A feature or go ahead and say them for the end and we can go ahead and answer those. Okay, let's move on to looking at a graduate application in a little more detail, okay? These are gonna be good pointers and potentially good things that you can learn about a graduate application, and hopefully you again write some notes about these items, and these are just general recommendations that we make. So typically a graduate school application components, we're looking at an online application form, we're looking at transcripts, we're looking at a resume CV, also letters of recommendation, statement of purpose / personal statement depending on the program. And then we're also looking at tests and GRE, okay? So let's look at the first one. So the first one is an online application form. So obviously when you start looking for programs, they're gonna tell you the application opens up usually in October and the deadline is December, January, sometime in February, okay? So that's the form that you have to submit. So my recommendations are to follow instructions really closely, right? Listing the name on top of every submitted document. So these are just some things that you can do to make sure that you cover all angles. Submit your application before the first deadline. Sometimes some programs have a second or a third deadline. So you want to definitely be one of the first people that submits the application. You want to make sure that that you don't leave any form fields empty or blank. At least type something on them, you know. Ensure the application is completely filled, right? So that's just some basic recommendations. So for transcripts, so number 2, transcripts, definitely you want to submit transcripts for every institution that you attended after high school. So even if you are a transfer student, you want to definitely submit community college transcripts, you know. You want to submit other undergraduate institution transcripts. And if you're applying for a grad doctoral program, you want to submit transcripts for your master's program if you did one, right? So number 3, resume, CV. Usually what we like to recommend is that you work on a professional looking resume, definitely with a subject matter expert edit, you know, so make sure that, yeah, you go to career services on campus and get your resume looking nice, you know, flowing really well, but also have a professional in the subject matter look at it, right? Individuals at engineering that can help you, right? Maybe a grad student, you know, or someone in your field that can look at it. So list only applicable information, so again, we're talking about a graduate school application. So you want to make sure that you tailor your resume for only applicable information to that particular program, So please bold quantitative data such as GPA and GRE scores. So you just want to bold it when you are formatting the resume. Max length for these resumes are usually 1 to 2 pages, right? No more than that. And then the question is, do you need a CV, a curriculum vitae? Those CVs are usually see the difference between a CV and a resume. Usually CV includes publications and research and other types of academic related experiences. So a CV, usually if you don't have any publications or any other type of professional academic experience, then I would just go with the resume. That's usually what prospective grad students, submit in their application. Okay, so create different resumes for different purposes and keep one for grad school. All right, letters of recommendation, really, really important. So here's number one. Preferably, please, if you're applying for a doctoral program, they want to see preferably letters only from faculty. If you're applying for a master's, usually they would also prefer letters from faculty, but you can also include maybe a letter from a grad student, maybe a letter from another individual that knows you really well, has worked with you, and that can actually attest to your abilities in that particular field, right? So again, this recommendation is huge. Letters from faculty only if you're thinking of a doctoral program, preferably for masters, but for masters, there's a little more flexibility. Do not submit personal letters from friends or family, obviously. Categorize your letters, first tier, second tier, third tier, Letters must be from individuals who can speak to your research and our academic performance. And also think of generic letters versus glowing letters, right? So which letters or who do you think is going to write a glowing letter for you? You definitely want to have those for a grad program. So more recommendations. Ask before submitting. So ask the faculty or the people who are going to recommend you before you submit their name and the contact. So usually these letters of recommendation, you would enter the person's name in the application, their email, they're going to get an email, and then, they're going to go on from there to actually submit your letter. So definitely be professional about asking them, have conversations with them ahead of time. For graduate programs, you definitely need a strong letter of recommendation. So if the recommender slightly hesitates about writing the letter, don't do it. Move on to the next faculty, the next person, and ask them as well. Okay. All right. So here are some steps to get a strong letter of recommendation. So before you ask them, get to know your recommender, right? If it's a faculty member, go to office hours, right? Maybe it's an individual that you did undergraduate research with, right? So maybe it's that PI that you worked with in the lab, right? So if you haven't talked to them for a while, touch base with them again and make sure that they know that you're working towards maybe applying for grad school. So you definitely want to perform well in their courses. You definitely want to read about their publications, their research, and potentially ask them to be your mentor if you would like that. Then at the time that you do the ask for the letter of recommendation, you want to definitely give them about 3 to 5 weeks of advance notice. You want to give them some background information about what program you're applying and why you're applying to that program. And you want to follow up after that, after you get the letter of recommendation or you ask for the letter of recommendation about potential deadlines or things like that. Okay, so those were letters of recommendation. Let's go with statement of purpose. So a statement of purpose basically describes your career goals and how your past experiences have to prepare you for your desired path. In this case, for your PhD in material science, right? Should that statement of purpose should be customized for research happening at the Department of Application. So if you're applying for the material science program at Stanford, right? Look at the research, look at the faculty you want to work with, and customize it for that particular institution, right? So the bulk of the statement of purpose can be the same thing across all of the applications, but there might be a couple sentences or a couple paragraphs where you are actually customizing depending on the institution and program that you apply. So tie your interest directly to potential advisors and their research, right? So again, just talking about the faculty, who you want to work with, and what their research is on. So some tips for a good statement of purpose: be concise, right? Focus on future goals and how your experiences have prepared you for those particular goals. Identify gaps quickly. By identifying gaps, I mean if there are some gaps you think in your research experience that you think might affect your chances in that graduate program, or if there is a potential, not very good quarter that you had, or some grades that you had that you're not very proud of, make sure that you identify and talk about that, immediately, and then you actually talk about those, just briefly, talking about those. The next bullet point just says, do not write about those deficiencies in grade length. So just make sure that you identify them, but you just quickly move on, right? So you're not talking in great lengths about how you had this bad quarter, and you're writing a whole story about that. So write, rewrite, and have others edit, and then customize as much as possible to that particular field. To a particular graduate program or institution. All right. So this slide, we're not doing any exercise right now, but we're just basically, basically giving you some homework, right, for you to do. So write different bullet points associated with the following topics, right? So career goals, goals after you complete your undergraduate degree. Number 2, relevant experience in your field, right? And number 3, schools and faculty doing the type of work that you want to do. This is going to get you to potentially start a spreadsheet, right? So this is where, again, this is your homework. These are some of the things that you can do to potentially start that spreadsheet that I talked about at the beginning, okay? So now, lastly, I'm going to talk about the difference from a statement of purpose, which is this, to a personal statement. So there are some programs that are going to ask for a personal statement. So a personal statement will describe typically your background and life experiences in more length, right? So you're going to be talking about social, cultural, economic, familial, education, and other aspects, right, that motivated you to maybe pursue graduate education. So you're going to be also able to discuss your personal history in more depth as it relates to your academic development, right? So that is the main difference between one and the other. Statement of purpose, you talk about your research, you talk about, what you want to do with your research in that particular area of study. In a personal statement, you sort of tie your experiences and your background into your goals and what you want to do. All right, finally, let's talk about the GRE. So when is the best time to take the GRE? Best time is spring of junior year. Don't freak out if you're currently a senior and you haven't taken it. This is the ideal time, but it doesn't say that you can take it any other time, right? You can take it before you're a junior or even after you complete your junior year. But this is what we recommend to be the best time for you to take the GRE. So guess what? Those current juniors, this quarter is a perfect one for you to take it. It's not offered due to the current situation, but as soon as it's available, hopefully you'll start considering it. So the GRE is a graduate record exam. It's a computer-based exam that has different sections such as math, verbal, and writing. It has discipline-specific exams as well. User resources such as online practice exams and campus workshops, right? Submit your GRE scores with the admissions packet. And also, the GREs are usually required for funding at some universities. So take the GRE if you can. It is required for both a master's and a doctoral program. So some tips on the GRE. Number one, you should take the GRE even if the school does not require it. It's always good. It's a good idea. Number two, take free practice exams to be familiar with the format of the exam and what kinds of questions they're going to be asking you. And number three, make sure that you are aware of the score submission deadlines for your graduate application. Right, so we're at the end here of our slides for this afternoon. I want to just invite you to connect with us, connect with me. This is the website for the grad division on campus, grad.ucz.edu. Also, if you're interested in learning more about what other students are doing on campus, specifically grad students, maybe you want to attend and meet some grad students, this is a good place. But gradlife.ucz.edu, that is a good website too. gradlife.ucz.edu. We post events that graduate students have on campus. Usually you can attend to those events as well, you know, and there's a good chance that you can meet some grad students there. With that, I want to thank you all for being here with us, you know, and I want to make sure that we answer all your questions, right? So please type them into the Q&A feature or the chat, and we'll start answering those right now. Okay, so there's a question about letters of recommendation, and when I talked about the tiers and what I meant by the tiers in the letters of recommendation. So let's go back to that letter of recommendation slide right here. So categorize, third bullet point, categorize your letters, second tier, third tier. So let's just say that you have a set of, you've asked about 4 or 5 different faculty, right? So think about what the relationships you have with those faculty or those individuals that are writing a letter and what they can potentially write about you, right? So if you think that your letters of recommendation, that there might be 1 or 2 faculty that you don't know so well, but I think they're going to write a good letter, but it's maybe not going to be a glowing letter. So I would say, you know, put them in that second tier, right? So the most important ones will go, you know, so just basically categorize them in what you think they're going to write, because they're also not going to tell you, or they're not going to send the letter to you first so you can send it to the application. So you just got to basically, you know, think about your relationships with the faculty and the individuals that are writing a letter for you and go from there. Okay. All right. So let's talk about another question here. So this question is, how do you network with faculty enough to a point where they can write a letter of recommendation for you, right? And this person asked about, you know, attending a class with a professor and potentially just asking them after you take that class to write a recommendation letter for them, right? But how do you sort of build that relationship? So my first recommendation here is definitely go to office hours, right? And you want to start that as soon as the quarter begins, because you have a limited amount of time to actually meet them, right? And to actually, you know, talk to them. So if there's a class that you see that is really close to what you are interested in studying in the future, establish a relationship with that faculty. So you want to definitely start by going to office hours, introducing yourself. Faculty, you know, they like to talk about themselves and their research and their experience. So make sure that you have questions prepared for that meeting with that faculty member. You ask them questions about what they're doing. You briefly talk about, you know, what you want to do, but definitely just, you know, if there's not enough time, you definitely want to keep going to office hours. So that's a really good way to build rapport with that faculty and to be comfortable enough after 1 quarter of being in their class to potentially say, hey, thank you for the class. It was really helpful. I think I might be following with you, in the summer because I might be applying for a graduate degree and I might need your help with the application, right? They're going to know that you're going to probably ask them for a letter of recommendation. This is not something that is, rare for them. It's really common for students to ask for letters of recommendation. So they will be aware of what you will be asking them. So that's how I would approach those conversations. And there's definitely things that you can do in office hours that could benefit you to get to that point. Good question. Next one is, so who do you ask for a letter of recommendation if you don't plan on pursuing a master's degree immediately after finishing bachelor's? So I would imagine this question goes to potentially just saying that if you don't actually apply, right after you finish your bachelor's to a grad degree, to start a grad degree, and sort of what you're going to be doing between those years that you're going to be between finishing your bachelor's and starting your grad, so those gap years that they call. So my recommendation to doing those gap years is to potentially just keep, again, it's really important to keep in contact with those faculty. So if that faculty, right, you took a class with that faculty, you got really acquainted with them, and you graduate, maybe potentially the fall after you graduate, you just reach out to them and you say, hey, just to let you know, this is what I'm doing, but I'm really interested, so just keep that connection going, okay? And make sure that relationship is still active even after you graduate with your bachelor's from UCSD. So that's going to be my recommendation there. Okay, so there's a question about if there are any thoughts on the GRE and the COVID-19 situation currently. So my recommendation on that, just keep planning as if nothing had happened. I mean, by that I mean, just keep planning for you to take the GRE at some point, right? I don't know how that's going to change in the future in terms of how many if the GRE is going to be offered for you to take it, or if programs are going to require it, right? So I don't know how that's going to look, and that's something that I am looking forward to see how graduate programs are going to react to this, and also what ETS, the company that issues the GRE, how they're going to also react to this. So let's just wait. But my recommendation right now is just keep planning to take it at some point. All right. So, okay. So there's another question here about GPA and applications, and if there's maybe GPAs and different GPAs and how that can help your application stand out. I would say if you have a lower GPA and you want to make sure that your application stands out, there's plenty of opportunities, right? So the focus nowadays on holistic admissions and holistic review of your applications, the whole purpose for that is to look less at numerical factors, numerical indicators such as a GPA or a GRE score, and look more, or look in the other way too, of what the student brings to the grad program, right? So when they're reading a graduate application, and your graduate application, if they see that your GPA maybe is on the lower end of those GPAs or the people applying, but hey, you have great leadership experience. You also you did an internship, or you had really good research experience. Your letter recommendation is really good. So again, those are all items that get basically taken in consideration for your application. So I wouldn't say having a lower GPA does not mean that you have less chances. It just means that you can glow and you can also shine in other sites and other aspects of your application as well. And I encourage that. So in this case, there's a question about industry and if that helps after you graduate, maybe going into industry, you know, to gaining some experience. Depending on what you want to do, I would say industry can be helpful. But again, if you are really just, you know, looking forward to work in industry, right, but you want to get your master's, maybe, yeah, getting some experience first in the workplace and in the industry, and then, you know, potentially going back and doing a master's program could be beneficial, not only for you in terms of, you know, learning new things, but also in your career at that particular company industry that you're at. If you're really interested in academia and research, then I would say for that, I would just say, yeah, you can definitely go to industry. The experience is going to be helpful, but if you're interested in academia or research, I would just say apply for a doctoral program. All right, so there's a question about the current pandemic and how that's affecting grad school applications for next year. It's a little early still to know how it's going to affect it. There's going to be definitely some repercussions in different aspects of graduate school and graduate school admissions. But as far for the student goes, I think the biggest one will be just the GRE, that students are not able to take it right now in person. So that would be the biggest, I guess, for the students, and also just the fact that, you know, maybe you know, those office hours that I'm talking about, and establishing a relationship with a faculty or just having conversations with the faculty to get letters of recommendation might be a little harder, but it doesn't say that you can actually accomplish it. But those would be some of the things that I can think of. Okay. Is it feasible or common that students prepare for both industry, grad school and industry at the same time? So they both have offers from both grad schools and jobs by the time the spring of the senior year. So this question is just about, is it feasible to prepare for both, either going to grad school and going to work in an industry as an engineer at the same time, and have offers, you know, at the end when you graduate, basically, you know, job offers, I guess, and like offers for grad school. It's feasible as long as you are able to just maintain your a good organized schedule. And again, grad school applications can be you know, just hard to put together because there's so many items that you need to take care of. But it is feasible, I think. You can apply for jobs also. So if you're still, you know, undecided whether you want to go one way or the other, you know, that's something that that it's feasible for you to do. So there's a question about letters of recommendation again for, do they have to come from faculty? Yeah, my recommendation it is that they come from faculty. What about postdocs or previous postdocs that maybe you have worked with or you have met? So postdocs are fine. I think, again, faculty, you know, I would say postdocs number 2, grad students number 3, right? And then we can talk about the, like, if you have an individual that you work with, let's just say a director of a program that you're participating in, or some other individual that you think is going to write a good letter for you, then maybe you know, that's going to be also, it's just a matter of what program you're applying for to see where in that scale you would consider them for submitting a letter. But again, postdocs are fine. There's a couple more questions here. So thoughts on attending post-baccalaureate programs like the one NIH offers before applying to graduate schools? What are the benefits versus straight to graduate school, going straight to graduate school from undergrad? So there are some benefits, definitely, to doing baccalaureate programs, because you are just building on experience, right? So I've heard it both ways. It just depends again on, after you look at your sort of experience and your career in undergrad. Um, if you think you're going to have good chances to go to grad school, maybe you apply, right, to see if you're able to get in. But if you're not able to get in, then post-baccalaureate programs are a good opportunity to get research. I've seen it in both ways. Student getting admitted into PhDs in their fields in really good schools, you know, and just getting there through different channels. Number one, they just went from undergrad to grad straight. They applied, they got admitted. But there are some individuals that have done these post-baccalaureate opportunities in these programs to actually get to that dream graduate school and program. So yeah, definitely beneficial. So are there research opportunities available for people who have already graduated from their bachelor's? Yeah, there are opportunities, and those are either in baccalaureate programs or other programs, you know, that you also can do. So I would just encourage you to look for those online, but just doing a search on a browser and potentially finding those at different institutions. I would even go to the length of adding maybe an institution that you're interested in. Usually you'll find summer or just research opportunities for that particular one. Next question is, pass, no pass classes from this quarter affect my chances into getting to grad school? That's hard to tell. I would say my hope is that programs will be understanding of what the current situation is, and that they will understand that students are getting, you know, pass, no pass courses and grades. So hopefully they'll be understanding of that. But I wouldn't be able to tell if it's going to affect for sure. How many grad programs do people typically apply for? So typically, I've heard that students apply anywhere from 5 to 10 programs, right? So think about it. You're applying to 5 to 10 different times, but most of those times, again, the materials, it sounds like a lot and a lot of applications, but the materials are, you know, pretty much the same. You're going to be customizing the statement of purpose. You're going to be customizing different fields, but the rest of it is going to be pretty same. So you can definitely do 5 to 10 applications, no problem. So there's a question about UCSD and if the current situation have they discussed anything in regards to the current pandemic situation on graduate admissions? Not to my knowledge, not that they haven't, but I don't know if they have and what they have talked about. A couple more questions. Is there a resource that we can access to know more about scholarships and fellowships for grad school? So next week we're going to have a funding for grad school workshop. So another WISE workshop. So if you're able to attend to that one, we're going to have some information about fellowships and scholarships. And so please come. We'll share more there. And okay, this is a good one. Do UCSD undergraduate students get an advantage to be a UCSD graduate admit? Okay, so this is an interesting one because there's usually a myth out there that you definitely want to apply to different programs, to a different institution when you go into a grad program, right? Different than your undergrad. I would say do what you think it's good for you. If you like the program at the institution that you're currently undergrad in, apply here, definitely. I don't know if there's going to be an advantage. It just depends. I would think on the program, your relationship with maybe people that are associated with that program. I don't know if there's an advantage, but I would say, I mean, hopefully that they know that, you're an undergrad student, the type of education that you're getting as an undergrad, they will be more familiar with that. And lastly, so how important is school ranking in terms of difficulty to get into a program? Is it important applying to universities back in high school? Is it as important as applying to universities back in high school? Well, rankings is important, are important because the rankings are also going to determine how competitive those programs are. So, the higher the program is ranked, definitely the more competitive applicant pool they're going to have, right? So it will be a little more difficult to get maybe into those programs, but it's not impossible. So with that, I think we concluded right on time. Thank you all for all of your questions. Again, my name is Edgar Baez, and hopefully I can see you next week in our funding for grad school workshop. And yeah, thank you.
And just to add, it's Wednesday at 11 a.m. and there is a Facebook event that you all can find, and there will also there has also been a email that has been sent to all the students about it. See you all next week on Wednesday. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you, Edgar.
Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone.